guys, what's up? My name is Jimena, and today we're going to be continuing our talk on plastic in the ocean. But before we get into it, I just wanted to remind you guys to hit subscribe if you haven't already and give this video a thumbs up. But yeah, without further ado, let's just get on with our conversation.
Also, like I think we're reaching we're almost there. So there's 6 tipping points that are basically going to make it to where all the damage is like irreversible on the planet and we're basically going to die. And one of them I think is the I can't remember, but I know it's one of the big ice sheets that completely melts. And like I was
Oh,
looking,
Greenland?
is it Greenland? I think it was Greenland, because I was looking at like it's a thing, and I was looking at like the models showing how much the ice has changed. And so like you can see it where the ice used to come out so far in the winters, and like now it's getting smaller and smaller. And like that you're already noticing that in Alaska, or and like the northern territories of Canada, because like polar bears are now coming into contact with humans more and coming into contact with grizzly bears when that never happened before, but because of the fact that there's no longer a lot of ice for them to walk on. Like you see pictures of like polar bears that are just like standing on small pieces of ice because there's nowhere else for them to go, you know? And I think
Yeah.
polar bears are often left out of the conversation in terms of like marine life, because like yeah, they don't live within the oceans, but they rely on them. And I think I feel like they should be included in it, even though I know they're like land animals, but or land mammals, but
Yeah, but they hunt in the
yeah, they
ocean.
hunt in the oceans and they spend time on the ice and everything. So I think that's definitely something that needs to be discussed as well, you know? And then you also have those people who deny climate change and deny all these environmental things. And those are the people that we really need to like address, because they're going to cause problems.
Oh my God. So there's this dude that keeps commenting some climate change denialist video on all of my videos, and YouTube always puts it as spam. So I've never like taken it off of spam so nobody can see it. But I looked up the video because I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Let me see what your point of view is. And it was this dude that used to work for Greenpeace, and he was like one of like the founders, I think, like one of the main people up there. Literally halfway through, I realized that his justification for not believing in climate change is that everything that Greenpeace does and like researches isn't visible to the eye. So like microplastics, you can't see it with your eye. You got to go out to the ocean and put it under a microscope to see it. CO2 is not visible. But what neither is oxygen, neither is gravity. So like that is literally like his justification for saying that Greenpeace is nothing but liars.
That's like the flat earthers. Like people believe that the earth is flat because they haven't seen the earth round themselves, even though we have pictures of it and there's like literally so much documentation showing that the planet is round, and people don't want to believe it because they don't see it themselves. And it's just
Yeah.
like there's things that humans were never meant to see, and there's things that we've created that we can't see. And it shouldn't you shouldn't deny it just because you can't see it. Like, and,
Mm-hmm.
and you know what I've noticed, and this is go back to religion, a lot of religious people are like that, but yet they believe in something they can't see. And I'm not saying that that's wrong or that that's bad, but it's like if they can believe in something they can't see for those reasons, they should be able to recognize that these things are real, even though they can't see them. You know what I mean? It's kind of
Yeah,
the
like they
same.
praise this old ass book that was written like how many thousands of years ago in a completely different time with completely different circumstances in a completely different world with no iPhones, no technology, no transportation of the sort that we have, and yet they continue to like base everything off of that. Like, oh my gosh. And I am like, I went to a Catholic university. Like, I know a lot about the history of the Catholic Church. Like, that's why I can say like there's so much, so much.
Yeah. So my dad's family is Catholic, and they tried to bring me up as Catholic, and I think I did like the what is it called, the first communion? Is that a that's
Yeah, First Communion.
so I did that, but after that I never did anything again, and I was never religious. But most of the reasons because like my dad's not native, and so I was very aware of the things that the Catholic Church did to both of my tribes, and not even just mine. A lot of tribes in the Southwest California, for example, the missions and everything. Uh,
Mm.
and so I was just like, I do not want to be a part of religion that did these things, and so that's kind of like why I never did it, and I'm not religious, but I agree with you on everything. I know I'm like bouncing back on topics, like away from this, but there's so many problems that are part of this larger problem that I think need to be addressed. But like,
I know. We didn't even get into like ocean acidification, which just like
No,
goes back to the emissions, and it's just a cycle. Like,
literally, this it's an entire system. But to get back onto the ocean stuff, a really depressing fact is that for every 2.2 pounds or kilogram of plankton, there's 13.2 pounds and 13.2 pounds, which is 6 kilograms of plastic in the oceans, which is like ridiculous. And like fish eat these things, whales eat these things, and so they end up in their stomachs. And so what's happening is the chemicals within these um, within the plastic are getting into the bloodstream of the fish, and then the fish ends up on our tables. And so one of the theories that I read is like there's higher amounts of cancer cases because of this, and a lot of people don't realize this. And like the whales that eat these fish, there's plastic in their bellies, and so they end up getting into the whales' bellies, and all these different. There's so many different problems from the plastic, and it just stems from the fact that we we're just very disposable. But back to what we were saying, I think like I feel like there's just decisions that we need to make to address the plastic, and we've continued to just say this in this video because it's so important that I wish
all
people,
ties back.
yeah, I wish people would understand. And it's like I was telling you that paper that I wrote. It was like Proposition KHP something. Don't remember the numbers, but it was basically like what I calculated the amount of money that we would need to clean up the oceans based on estimates from various organizations that are doing the work. And one of them was NOAA. And so the alternative was they're similar to a departure tax on flights. Any flights that went over the Pacific Ocean, from all countries, there was a 1% tax on that plane ticket price, and all that money went to cleaning up the oceans. And so the amount of money that we would need to pay people to physically remove it and get everything out would be raised in like a year.
Damn.
Yeah, and so it's like there's ways for us to fund it, or like if governments were to stop paying them like themselves so much money, that's money that we could use to fix all the environmental problems that we're causing. Because it's like you can pay yourself as much money as you want, but if we don't fix the planet, we're gonna die, and it's not gonna matter.
Yeah. Like what people don't understand is like when we say save the planet, we actually mean like save the humans, because the planet doesn't give a shit if we're here or not. Like it was here billions of years before humans, and it'll be here billions of years after. It's kind of just our time here. Like, are we gonna limit it, or are we gonna like mitigate it and be okay for a couple more generations?
Exactly. I feel like we're, as far as species go on the planet, we're the weeds of species because we just spread and spread and spread, and we just keep it's just like we're parasites. Like we literally are. We're a parasitic species. And like I also think it has to do with like not that doesn't do anything, but what I'm trying to say is we have this idea that humans are the pinnacle of everything. So we view ourselves as separate from nature, but we view ourselves above any other animal in the animal kingdom, but that's not the case. Because if it weren't for guns and like the things that we have, the larger species could kill us off. Like we're not at the top of the food chain. We're only or naturally we're at the top of the food chain right now because of the things that we've created. But it's just like we're not a top species, and like there's things that we need to recognize that we share this planet with other beings. It's not just ours. You know what I mean? And even that we don't. The land doesn't belong to us. We belong to the land. You know what I mean? And the oceans and the streams and the mountains and everything. Like that's something that people need to recognize. And that goes back with like land connection. Like I'm working on my connection to the land, which is like like an indigenous thing. Since I've started reconnecting with my tribes and stuff, and so that's something that I'm working on. But I think that
So like what kind of stuff are you doing?
it's basically just getting myself like familiar with the land, and just like going out there more and more, and just like even the environment that I'm in right now, and forming a connection with it, and like recognizing the different types of plants that we have, like the big saguaro cacti that we have, which are like those famous desert cacti, just like the times of the sun says, like just different little things. Like it's kind of hard to explain, but I think that that's something that we kind of society needs to kind of start making important, because then I think that also transcends into the whole like us altering the natural environment to meet our needs instead of us altering our needs or not altering our needs, but altering our lives and the way that we function to meet the environment's needs. Because like now, say like the Amazon rainforest, for example, it's not all in Brazil. It's also in like some other countries. And so like one country could be like, okay, we're going to conserve the Amazon and we can't do this or do this and do this. So like the Amazon within their country is safe, but the other countries aren't going to be because of the fact that they regulate it themselves. And like, yeah, they can come to agreements together, but at the end of the day, if one government wants to change everything, they can.
Yeah, like, and that's the shitty thing. Like things exactly like the Amazon rainforest and like the ocean, like international waters, like
Yeah.
it's just such a great area. And it sucks because I don't know if you knew this, but the president of Brazil, his justification for all the shit that he's allowing to happen in the rainforest is like, oh, well, the US did it, China did it, India did it. Like they had their fair share at depleting their land and like trashing their water and their air and everything. So like, why can't we do it? Like we're still developing. And like that's literally his justification, which on one hand, like in a way he's right.
Yeah.
Like how are we like having like rolling back all of our emissions, like not being able to control our guns, like not being able to do this and that, yet we're over here being like the bigger man saying, hey, like you should probably stop doing that. Like it sucks because it's a gray area,
Yeah.
but like we're right, but it's like a gray area.
Yeah. We're like dictating the way other nations do things, but we don't want to change the way we do things.
Yeah.
I think there's one big thing that people don't necessarily understand is the fact that like there was a lawsuit from the tribes against Brazil and to protect the rainforest, and they won, and then now everything's being burned down. And like that just it's like indigenous genocide, and that continues to this day. And like it's similar to like the Holocaust, for example. Like some of my grandpa's family where it was affected by that because we're Jewish, and the way that Hitler did things, he said that he was inspired by the way that the U.S. treated Native peoples, and it's
That's the same thing that Bolsonaro said about the indigenous people in Brazil.
and like that's why a lot of countries, well, what people don't realize is like as much as like the US, I mean, we're a lot better off than a lot of countries, which we need to recognize, but there's a lot of things that the US does that is problematic, and we do influence a lot of countries. A lot of countries want to do follow our footsteps because they see how quote unquote successful our country has become, and so they want to do the exact same things to become as successful as we have, even though we've done horrendous things to Native people, to the environment, and other nations just to get to where we are. And countries want to do the same thing because they want to be as affluent as we are, even though we're taking resources from other countries just to be as affluent as we are. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like we really aren't shit. Like we're not even number one in education. Definitely not number one in gun safety. Like what are like literally what are we number one in other than mass shootings?
Right? I feel like we're not number one in anything. We're shit. We really are. Like
Yeah.
we're better than some countries in regards to like the way that we live, but we're
But
shit.
the thing is that we displace it. So
Literally,
like if we really had all the garbage that we produce on this soil, if we literally had every factory that we manage on this soil instead of in China polluting or like in whatever other country, like we are the worst. Like it's just we displace it.
seriously, people are. It's just like like I said, I think there's a lot of government regulations that need to change in order for us to start fixing things, and there also needs to be a lot of international agreements for it. And like if you go to Starbucks, take your reusable cup. Don't use disposable plastic. Like you can even buy like reusable utensils. So like if you're gonna go to like say you're gonna go to Chipotle, don't get a fork. Just use your own utensils. Like there's different things that we can do to slowly change these things, but it's just like people don't want to do it. And like you said, it's a culture shift, and I think it's something that I feel like if all of us individually change the way that we consume things and we try to influence those around us to change the way they consume things, collectively we will make a really big change. Because it's like when it comes to like wanting to save the world, people or fix problems that affect like the entire nation, everybody wants to go and change things at the federal level, but they don't realize that you need to change things at the community level in order to get to that level. And that same what's it called? That same process works with the way that we consume things. And like, as sad as it sounds, the biggest thing that works is tax breaks. Like, I think if we were to give tax breaks to them for doing these things, it would work. Um, but that also is very problematic in itself, because it's like these companies should be paying a lot of taxes because of the things that they do. But
how are we going to
yeah,
incentivize?
how are they going to get them to change? That's another problem. And so it's just like it's a wicked problem, and it's like systems within systems. Like, it's, you have to fix this system so it changes this system, but if you change that system, it might negatively affect another system. And it's just like there's so many different things that we need to change. And I think that we need to teach people how these issues work and how everything's intertwined, and how our personal decisions are intertwined with the way that like plastics ending up in the oceans, how the environment, like inland, like within like national parks and everything, are getting what am I trying to say? Getting polluted. Like, if you go, like when I go hiking here, I cannot even tell you how many like plastic cups or like utensils or garbage bags that I see, and I'm just like, what? Like, how is this ending up here? Like, I mean, I know how it's ending up here, but I'm like, why can't people just clean up after themselves? Like, it's literally not that hard to just keep onto your trash and go and throw it in the trash bin. Like, obviously, I don't want people to just throw stuff in the trash because it's going to end up in a landfill. But if you're going to throw stuff away, don't throw it just anywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I actually, let me see if I could find it. I did a poll on Instagram like last year saying, hold on. Oh, so if you have a piece of trash, how long will you wait before you toss it on the ground? And only 7% said that they would wait like 0 to 10 minutes before they threw it on the ground, which sounds like a little bit, but if you blow that up to take into account millions of people, that 7% is actually pretty freaking significant. And it's a lot. Even the homeless problems, like here around Portland, I work outside. So I'm literally in like different areas, but sometimes it's people's backyards, and they have like acres and acres of land, and it's just forest, like literally just big ass trees. Like, you would think you were in the middle of nowhere if you didn't know where you were. And we're still finding big ass piles of garbage because homeless people will wander onto their property and just sleep there and like leave all of their garbage, and it's just a perpetually like psych like it's a problem that just keeps like going and going. Because like, how do you tell a homeless person like, hey, give a shit about your carbon footprint? Like,
Right. And see, that goes back to like with people, what am I saying? Like low income people or people who are homeless, they don't even have the means to meet their basic needs. And so it's exactly what's happening is how do we expect them to care about their choices that they're making that are harming the environment if they can't even meet their basic needs? So it's like we need to be able to have um, we need to provide, like, I guess, the resources for marginalized and lone communities and homeless people to be able to meet their needs, so that way they can worry about these type of decisions, because it's like we can't expect them to worry about these decisions if they can't even survive. You know what I mean?
yeah.
That's something that I think definitely needs to change, and I think a lot of people don't want to recognize that. I feel like our generation really does, but I feel like there's a small percentage of our generation who doesn't want to recognize that. Cough cough Republicans, but
Yeah, no, like like this literally ties into the Green New Deal and all of the goals that she outlined, that AOC outlined in the document, which I don't know if you read it. I did a video on it, like just outlining what her mission statement is. And like, people get so pissed off that the last thing on the last goal of hers on the Green New Deal says that she wants to help low income and like the targeted, what did she call it, like the at-risk communities, like people of color, women, like the homeless communities, veterans, like everything. And people get so pressed that like something that's talking about the environment is also talking about helping these communities, when in reality it's a problem that's tied together.
yeah,
Like,
that's something that people like don't like recognize. And like another thing that I think people don't understand is how cities are planned out, like urban planning. Like Portland is actually the way that their regulations and the way that they plan out their city, they're actually, I think, they are the number one planning, they have the number one planning department in the country because of the way that they do things, because they're minimizing their impact on the environment. Versus if you look at Phoenix is literally the definition of urban sprawl. Like, it's nothing but miles and miles and miles of subdivisions. Like, and they just continue to grow out and grow out and grow out. And it's because people from other states are moving here and they're just building houses. Instead of just like instead of our planning department within these areas trying to like minimize the amount that we're moving out and kind of try to take care of the environment that we do have, they're not doing that. And that's another problem, just harming the environment. But then that also is the same thing happening in coastal cities, because people are just like the planning departments aren't taking into consideration how this is affecting the environment. A great example are the way that sea turtle hatchlings are dying off in Florida. So like those beach communities, there's streetlights that are right off of the beach, or streetlights, like the white ones, not the stoplights. And so hatchlings will see those and they mistake it for the moon. So they start crawling towards the roads instead of towards the ocean. And so you have these sea turtles that either fall in like the drains under the streets, or they get run over by cars and all these different things. And that just goes to show that these planning departments, they don't consider the impacts that we're having on wildlife or on just like the natural environment in general. No, there's so many. I feel like we could literally have an entire like week-long lecture on all of this, because there's so many different things that are intertwined with the larger problem that is like the climate crisis and the ocean crisis. And so it's like, obviously the ocean crisis is part of the climate crisis, but
honestly, like, we should make a podcast.
I would be so down. Actually,
like, we should honestly just make a podcast. We have been talking for almost an hour, and like, I know that we can keep talking, but this is gonna be a long ass video.
We should talk about it, because I actually thought about making a podcast.
We should do it.
I'm down.
See how we'll like work out the details of that, but like, I could literally keep talking about this like for the rest of the night if we wanted to.
Really, me too.
I'm so happy that I met you.
Same. It's like, I don't meet a lot of people who are as passionate about this problem as like I am, so it's really cool to like know other people that are, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know, like, every person that even gets me kind of started on this, like, they end up hearing my whole entire lecture on the environment.
It's literally so.
I can never gauge if I like went too far or not, because they always just end up saying, wow, I wish more people thought like you.
Usually I feel the same way when people say that. I'm like, okay, I probably just talk too much, and they just like in one ear and out the other, so that's all they said. But I hope that like the things I do say kind of stick with them. I usually post like informational threads on Twitter too, just to kind of get people to like listen. But people interact with like my tweets about me talking about like a mental breakdown or all these different things, but they never really interact with like these bigger issues. And I'm just like, why can't y'all interact with like the important stuff and not me just talking about my life?
Just make it a metaphor for life. Just like embody the like Mother Earth and just tweet like you're her.
Right, I need to do that.
Like, wow, stressful day, and then like post a picture of like an oil spill or something.
I'm actually gonna do that tonight. That's actually okay. Well, it's already 8:30.
I know. Let's sign off, and like then let's just have like a little recap. It's really hot in here. But all right, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I know we probably talked your ear off because there's so much going on in the world.
Literally, and it's like we said, there's so many different problems that tie into like this one. And even though this video was supposed to be about like ocean problems and stuff, we're still gonna we'll probably end up like talking again about the actual problem and have it more structured. But I feel like today was just like a round table to kind of talk about all the different issues.
Yeah, like honestly, like we had a structure to it, and there's just so much stuff happening that it just kind of sprawled.
Yeah.
Like I literally, let me just show you, I had sticky notes of like a structure. And how much of this did we really talk about? About half of it.
Yeah. We'll get there though, but hopefully y'all enjoyed this video.
Yeah, so don't forget to subscribe and go hug a tree, and we will see you guys next time.
Plastic consumption.
That too.